Good morning, guys. Trying to get ready with this right camera. There it goes. So, I'm not sure why my Stream Deck wasn't working. My Stream Deck is basically how I'm able to kind of control which camera is on and which not, and I wanted to do something a little different, so I sat on this side of the table. It is Wednesday night for us, Thursday morning for you guys. Here I am in the podcast room. I usually sit there. I wanted to do something different, so I'm sitting here. And then it's been a while, as you know, since I've done anything in the podcast room. So like some of my equipment needed updating. And I'm just like, and then I updated it and now it's not working. Usually I'm able to see all these little buttons. It controls the cameras and which way it switches and the microphone mute and all that stuff. And it wasn't working. So I'm kind of doing it manually with a mouse and I could see the screen. And so if you see me looking that way, because I got that camera, I got the close-up, this one I'm on, close-up, then I got that camera, and that close-up. But usually I can control it here, but can't, so it's all right. I'm going to do a devotional anyways. Let me adjust this microphone right there. We had a really great Bible study tonight. We were in the book of Romans, and it was heavy, man. It was a really good subject. And this is what I like about expository teaching. In case you never heard what that means, expository is basically, in the most basic form, it's reading line by line, verse by verse, not skipping verses, because what happens is it forces you to hit verses that you normally wouldn't hit. It hits verses that maybe you wouldn't teach on, and it doesn't let you skip around. And I think it's a better foundational way of learning. I don't necessarily adhere to expository preaching every single sermon, but for Bible study, I think it's very, very important to teach that way. I've been teaching that way for many, many years. And I just think it makes for a better way of teaching, you know. Personally, that's what I think. I think it's a lot more powerful that way. And so yeah. Anyways, this is Holy Week. We're halfway through. We started with Palm Sunday. Then we had evangelism on Monday night. We had intercession prayer here at the church for an hour and a half yesterday. Today we had our Wednesday night Bible study, and tonight actually is a really exciting time because we're having our Bible college classes, but we're going to do something different. We're going to have it as an open house, meaning that the Bible college courses that I do, people are able to watch it through Zoom. I have a lot of people enrolled that don't even live in the Modesto area. So anybody can enroll and sign up. The two courses I'm running right now are How to Hear God's Voice and Counseled by God. And so what I decided to do, because it's Holy Week, I wanted to make everything available to you. So like yesterday's intercession prayer, normally that's just in private here at the church, but I decided to live stream it. So those of you that are part of our church, but maybe you don't physically come, I didn't want to leave you guys out of it. So everything, even Monday night evangelism, I think I live streamed like 15 minutes of it just to give you a gist of what it's like to be out there and to give you something. So I want you to be included in Holy Week. And the way I'm doing the Bible college, I'm not live streaming it, but what I do is I send every student a link for Zoom. And because of that, let's see, give me 1 second. I want to make sure Abraham's not looking for me. Okay. They didn't know I came into the podcast room. He's doing some stuff in the sanctuary. But anyways, whoever is interested in attending, whether it's the 5:30 or the 7 o'clock class, all you got to do is text a number, and once you text that number, text the word PLBS, and I'll add you to the list, and you're going to get the Zoom link, and you'll be able to join in via Zoom, or if you are in the local area, you're welcome to come. So between 5:30 and 6:30, we're doing the How to Hear God's Voice. And then from 7 to 8, the Counseled by God. I'm going to give you the number. Like I said, I'm doing all this manually with the mouse, so I can't really put a number up. But I'll give you this number, and you can rewind it and write it down. Let's see. Okay. The number is 833-242-5784. 833-242-5784. You're going to text that number the word PLBS. P as in Paul, L as in lion or Larry, B as in boy, and S as in Sam. PLBS. And it'll allow me to send you a text and an email with the Zoom link so you can join in on this week. It's an open house this week, so there's students that are enrolled. They're paying tuition into it and all that. But for you guys, for anyone interested, if you text PLBS, I will put you on there. Make sure you don't wait till the last minute, because once it gets close enough to class, I won't be able to send the text. I'm probably going to send a text out maybe about 3 o'clock my time. So if you're watching this past that, there's a slim chance you won't get the link. But anyways, with that, if you didn't get that number, just rewind it, guys. I wish I could have put it on the screen, but I didn't get a chance to. But I wanted to read a little bit more out of the book of Luke. Yesterday, all week, we've been reading some of the things that Jesus did during that last week before his crucifixion. And I wanted to continue on that subject of what it is that we were talking about. So, okay. Over the last week, we talked about Palm Sunday. Jesus coming into the temple. We talked about him cleaning out the thieves that were the merchants that were selling stuff there. We talked about Jesus weeping over the city of Jerusalem. We talked about the authority of Jesus challenged by the Pharisees and the scholars that were there. And yesterday we talked about the parable of the wicked tenants. And these are all really important things that Jesus was talking about, that the Lord was talking about. So I wanted to talk about this in Luke chapter 20. Let's see here. Okay. On Luke chapter 20, it says in verse 27. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it, and then we'll talk about it. It says, there came to him some Sadducees. So real quick, in case you don't know, because on the yesterday, it mentioned Pharisees. They were basically two different sects, kind of like denominations in a sense. The easiest way to make it more simpler, like, you know how there's Pentecostal, there's Baptist, there's Calvinist, there's Lutheran. So in a sense, it was like that. These were Jewish leaders, but they belonged to different groups. The Pharisees believed one thing, and the Sadducees, even though there was many similarities, there's some things that they disagreed upon. So the last thing we read about yesterday was about the Pharisees. Now we're going to see this group, the Sadducees, challenge Jesus. So there came to him some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection. So this right out the gate lets us know what it is that they believed. And they asked him a question, saying, Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, having a wife but no children, the man must take the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. So real quick, I know some of you are like, what? The brother married his dead brother's wife? That's kind of weird. Yeah, because it's weird in our culture. But let me explain that the Jewish people, they have always been very careful in not wiping out the bloodline of somebody. So if a man had a son and his son died before he was able to have children to pass on the bloodline, then the second son would marry that wife in order for the bloodline to continue. This was something that was very, very important to their custom, to continue the bloodline. As you can tell, even in the bloodline of Jesus, it was important for the bloodline of King David, because God promised that out of the bloodline of King David would come the Messiah. So the Sadducees are saying that they're trying to trip up Jesus. They're trying to get him to where he doesn't have an answer for the question that they're asking. So they ask him, "Teacher, Moses wrote that if a man's brother dies having a wife but no children, the man must take the widow and raise up offspring for his brother." So they said, now there were 7 brothers, and the first took a wife and died without children. So the first brother dies with no children. And the second and the third took her, and likewise all 7 left no children and died. So she married all 7 brothers. I know it's a little exaggerated, but they're trying to make a point. They're trying to trip up Jesus. So this woman was married to all 7 brothers, and none of them had children. So then it says, so in verse 32, afterward, the woman died. So she finally dies after the 7 brothers. And here's their question. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will this woman be? For the 7 had her as a wife. So they're trying to bring some confusion to Jesus, and they're like, "Ooh, we got him with this one. We got him with this one." And Jesus said to them, "The sons of this age are marry and are given in marriage." So Jesus says, number one, that he's establishing that here on earth, because remember what Adam and Eve were told in the very beginning: you shall be fruitful and multiply. Because literally it takes husbands and wives to make children to replenish the earth. This was one of the first things God commanded, to be fruitful and multiply. So that's why Jesus says the sons of this age, of this place, of this era, of this earth, they marry and are given in marriage. But those who are considered worthy to attain to that age, talking about in the kingdom, and to the resurrection from the dead, neither marry nor are given in marriage. He says there is no such thing in heaven, because there's no multiplication up there. There's no reason to create, So he says there's no such thing in there. He says, for they cannot die anymore. The whole reason to reproduce was because you were going to die. My great-grandparents had children and then they died, and my grandparents had children and they died, and my parents, and then my turn, and my children, and my great-grand, so that's the way it goes. They have to, because if we don't reproduce here on earth, we cease to exist. But heaven is not that way. Anyways, he says they can't die anymore because they are equal to angels and are sons of God. So there's no more, it's a whole different set of rules. He says, being sons of the resurrection, but that the dead are raised, even Moses showed in the passage about the bush, where he calls the Lord the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. Now he is not God of the dead, but of the living, for all live in him. I don't mean to detract or go off the rail on this one, but I've often used this verse right here because a lot of times people think that when we die, that we're just asleep. I know there's many Christian denominations that believe this. I do not believe this. I believe to be absent of this body is to be present with the Lord. I believe that he is a God of the living, not of the dead. What good is it if we're serving the Lord Jesus and then all of his followers are just dead? No, he's the God of the living. Okay, so in verse 39 it says, then some of the scribes answered, Teacher, you have spoken well, for they no longer dared to ask him any question. So it's like, it's not so much the point of whether they were talking about marriage or not, whatever. It was the fact that in his last week, people were trying to trip him up. People were trying to ask him questions to throw him off. And it's not even important about the question. It's kind of a dumb question from the Sadducees because they were trying to make a point for whatever reason. But the fact is that this is what we can take away from it, is that Jesus was being challenged even up to the last days before the crucifixion. They wanted to do him harm. They wanted to prove he was false. They wanted to do all kinds of stuff, you know. And then it says, but he said to them, how can they say that the Christ is David's son? So he asked them, they couldn't trip him up. So then he threw a question at them. And this is interesting. He says, how can they say that Christ is David's son? Right? Because you know how King David and the bloodline of David later on would bring the Messiah. So in a sense, the Messiah is the son of David. But then he quotes Psalms. It says, for David himself says in the book of Psalms, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Thus David calls him Lord. So how is he his son? He's like, you want to play word games with me? He goes, so basically King David, the bloodline of King David brought the Lord, but yet David in Psalm says, the Lord said to the Lord, calling the son Lord. So it was like he's like, okay, I can play that game too. You know, I can play in riddles too. You know, and so it says, and in the hearing of all the people, he said to his disciples, beware of the scribes, because they were trying to trip. They were coming at him like lawyer talk. And then he finally is fed up with it, and he looks at the regular people, the common folk, and he says, beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and love greetings in the marketplaces and the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at feasts, but they devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. So they try to trip him up. He throws a question back at them, and then he's like, listen, beware of these guys. Be careful with these guys, you know. And he says, because they dress very religious, they talk very religious, they know scripture, they love everybody greeting them in the marketplaces. They get the best seats when they walk everywhere because they're well respected as religious leaders, as religious men. He goes, but what good is that if they devour widows' houses, if they go after the property that once a man dies and leaves his wife, they devour that house. It's like they come at him like a hornet nest, you know. And he goes, and for a pretense they make long prayers. They receive the greater condemnation. The Lord could see right through this, and he's like, man, these religious people, they think they know the scriptures. Matter of fact, in another part of the Bible, he says, he's telling them, the religious folk, he goes, you search the scriptures, not realizing that they point to me. This is what Jesus said, you know. So and I want to say this one last part because I love this part. In chapter 21, Jesus, in the midst of that, right? In the midst of all these religious leaders trying to trip him up, it says here, Jesus looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the offering box. So he saw these rich people throwing all kinds of money in the offering box. And then he saw a poor widow, a woman with no husband, poor, put in 2 small copper coins, like 2 pennies. Right before these rich men threw all kinds of money into the offering tithing box. And Jesus sees this woman, poor widow, drop 2 little pennies. And he said, truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of them. Jesus says all these rich people, all the stuff they're putting in, this lady put 2 coins, and her offering is more than all of theirs combined. For they all contributed out of their abundance. But she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. Imagine if you have a truckload of fruits and vegetables, and you go by the Salvation Army, and you're like, man, I'm in a giving mood. And you give a quarter of that. I mean, tons of bananas and strawberries and grapes and asparagus and tomatoes, tons of it. But you still end up with your truck nearly full. And you walk off. You drive off and you're like, so man, I gave them, let's say you provided enough to feed everybody for 3 days. And then another person comes with an apple and a banana. And they pull up to the Salvation Army. They open their backpack. And they open it and realize all they have is an apple and a banana. But they see the need. And they see the hungry people. And that person reaches into the backpack and gives 1 apple and 1 banana. And the Lord would say, the person that gave enough for 3 days gave out of their abundance, but they still left the whole truckload. But this one gave all they had. And because of that, this one gave more than the truck. You know, you might not have the millions of dollars to feed third world countries. You might not have even 50 sandwiches to feed those under the bridge. But maybe you have an apple and a banana. Sometimes your tithe at church is the very thing that helps us continue going. And you might be thinking like, man, I can't give like the way others give. Maybe it's not even money. What if you have a skill that you're like, well, I can't really paint. I can't fix things. I'm not much of a greeter. But can I put the envelopes in back of the seats? Can I clean the front window? Because I notice there's a lot of fingerprints on it. Because I can't really move fast. It's hard for me to vacuum. I can't, but can I do that? And you see other people at the church doing all kinds of stuff. They're on ladders and they're doing this and they're doing that. They're zooming around with the vacuum and you're like, Lord, all I'm doing is cleaning the front window. And the Lord knows that you're using all of your strength to do that. So this is why we don't feel bad here when, I don't know, man. I know. Sometimes we do videos on our grocery giveaway and we're just all happy because we're like, hey, we got enough to bless 85 families. I'm not ignorant. I understand 85 families is nothing in the city of almost 300,000. But you know how proud we are, those 85 families? How excited we are when they pull up to give those 85 families groceries. And it's not even a whole lot of, maybe it's enough to hold them over for 4 days. But you know what? We do it unto the Lord. Everything you do, do it unto the Lord. Hey, this channel, I don't get thousands of views. This video probably won't even get 500 views. So, is it not worth nothing? How does the Lord see it? You know how the Lord judges it? By the hearts of those that are watching this. Is this blessing you? Maybe it gets 200 views, but it really blesses 10 of you. You think the Lord looks down on that? Or is the Lord going to say, you know what, David, you're not getting 20,000 views, so you know what, this podcast is garbage? I'm hoping that the Lord says, you know, mijo, you might not be reaching 20,000 people, and you're only reaching a few, but you're actually giving more than the one that gives to 20,000. I don't know. But I just wanted to talk with you guys. This is Holy Week. Do something different. Remember that phone number, guys. If you want to kind of be a part of our Bible college, heck, maybe it's something you want to be a part of and you don't really understand it, don't know how we do it. This is a perfect chance to be able to literally sit in on a college class, and you have two choices. I'm going to send you both links and you have a choice. So the number, if you want to pin, write it down. It's 833-242-5784. And you're going to text the word PLBS. PLBS. And it's going to ask you some information, and I'm going to answer you back with the link, the Zoom link, and you'll be able to join in on the Zoom class. If you are local, show up at 5:30 for learning how to hear the voice of God, 5:30 to 6:30. Then there's a 30-minute break. Then at 7 to 8, we have Counseled by God. It's a Christian counseling course. And if you've heard me talk about the Bible college and you kind of shy away because there's cost to it because of the tuition and the books and whatnot, this is a perfect chance. And I guarantee this, you're going to walk away having learned something, even if it's one session that you sit in on. So anyways, guys, God bless you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I hope you're having a great Holy Week. And may the Lord shine his face upon you. God bless you guys.